I have a sense that employees don't feel like it's a safe time to speak up on some of these things. Lack of communication between the manager and the employee of, is it safe to even tell my manager this is not going to work for me? They'd rather just look for another job and hope for the best and leave.
Do you feel that managers are well versed enough to be able to give feedback in a way that the employee will hear it?
No.
Welcome back to the Leadership Puzzle. Today I am joined by Carolyn Troyan. She is the president of Leadership 360, where she helps leaders navigate the challenges of performance, feedback, and leading through uncertain times. Carolyn has spent a career guiding organizations and executives through transformation, building leadership capability, helping teams unlock their full potential, and just helping them be better leaders. Our conversation is going to explore how leaders can reframe feedback to make performance more meaningful and guide their teams with clarity and empathy through this time of change. So get ready for insights that are both practical and inspiring. Carolyn, welcome to the Leadership Puzzle.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Excited to be here. Sounds like it's going to be fun.
It's going to be a blast. I think we're certainly kindred spirits, and I always love talking with HR professionals. You know, we're like, oh, it's our people.
Mhm.
You know, I think you said, yeah, that there's folks that think like us, and we're not alone in the world.
Exactly. It's good to have that right now. Definitely. That sense of community is important.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Well, one of the things that's really fascinating, you mentioned that you're doing a lot of coaching around navigating during, just really challenging times. And
Mhm.
gosh, I, I think if we go back to 2020, COVID really started
Mhm.
all of this. Right now, it's geopolitical, it's AI, it's economic, it's political, you name
Mhm.
it. But tell us about what you're seeing in the coaching world in terms of this disruption and what people are facing.
Yeah, I mean, I think thank God we had gone through COVID before this. So a lot of what I spend time when I'm doing individual coaching is what were some of the strategies that work for you and your team during COVID? What did you do? What did you learn? What did you learn about yourself, your own resilience, and what are some of those strategies, and how might you use those now? And so I think reminding people like we've been through uncertain times. This is not the first time. So what did we learn from that experience for ourselves? What did our teams learn? What will we go back and do differently? So a lot of just working through personal strategies and team strategies. I think that if I go back to COVID, the most successful leaders were the fastest to get out of what I call the freeze mode.
Mm.
So when there's a lot of uncertainty, a whole class of leaders just freeze. That's like the worst thing that can happen for the team.
Deer in headlights.
Yeah, deer in headlights. I'm not sure which way to go, so I'm not going to really communicate anything, but I'm not going to make any decisions right now, but I'm not going to say anything about this to the team. So that's sort of what I've seen is a common reaction that can have just horrific outcomes for the person and the team because they end
Sure.
up falling behind. The competition is way ahead of them, and they're just playing catch up from day one. So I think don't fall into that freeze stance. And so I do a lot of coaching work of just recognizing that's someone's go-to stance when they are stressed or uncertain. Okay, now what could you do differently? How would you experiment with attacking the problem in a different way? So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I see leaders sort of get tripped up on is I'm just not going to say anything because I don't know. I'm not going to admit that it's uncertain. I'm just going to keep plowing forward, or I'm just going to sit on decisions.
It's interesting. I was thinking, COVID certainly has marked like every generation, but
Mhm.
wholesale change and disruption is
Hmm.
not
Yeah.
anything new if you've been in business for
Hmm.
10, 15, 20 years, right? I mean, you had
Hmm.
the big real estate market crash in '08. Obviously, 9/11, and even before that, the internet, Y2K. So, what do you think is different if you've experienced those? But what do you think is different now that
Hmm.
is it the pace? Is it the scope and scale? What do you think has changed?
Yeah. That's such a good question. Yeah, I always feel like I'm like the old person in the room when I'm like, oh, I've been through this in the Silicon Valley before. Here we go again. And
Yeah.
the massive change. So I think in the tech industry, people who've grown up or tech, like I was also in gaming, I felt like there was disruptive change every like year in gaming. It's like, oh,
Oh,
now
sure.
people are playing games differently, and now we have the cloud, now we have that. So I think you get used to those changes. I think it's the compound political instability on top of like a massive change in technology. So I think it's those two together that feel so overwhelming to people and sort of like they're not sure where to go next.
Hmm.
If it was just like AI, that was the only thing, and we had stability around the world and a healthy economy and all those other things, I think people would be able to deal with it and say, okay, this is just like another step change in tech. It's much faster, but that's okay. We can get through it. We know how to do change management well. We've trained our managers. Like, let's get back to the basics of how we're going to navigate. But I think it's just the compounding changes, like you said,
Yeah.
have sort of thrown everyone off. I do feel like in the last month or so, probably the last 2 to 3 months, people have somewhat getting their footing back again. I think the
Hmm.
first couple months of the year were just so crazy because every day it was just another emergency change. So even though I don't know if the environment's changed, I think we've sort of a little desensitized to that and to say, okay, let's put that aside and what do we know? What do we not know? And let's do some scenario planning as a team. And I think the most positive leadership behavior is just calling it. Here are the changes. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know as a team. And let's do some scenario planning. And how can we use this to beat the competition? What are we going to
Yeah.
do to survive? Some of these companies, like if we don't make changes to our product, we won't be here in 5 years. So I think there's this sort of burning flat platform call to action and people getting into the change management cycle of, okay, how we're going to get our teams through this. So I feel like that has now been a very positive shift and teams, it's still changing fast, but now they're kind of getting their footing and they're able to move forward a little more than maybe January, February. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, it reminds me of you mentioned just the sheer volume
Mhm.
um, of change that has happened, and let's call it the last 5 years, right? Literally since COVID, there hasn't been a any kind of slowdown. I think you're right. It people are feeling like, okay, maybe we're on the verge of things settling down and having a
Mhm.
little bit of who knows, focus.
Mhm.
But I think there's a fatigue that has come
Mhm.
with just multiple years of constant
Mhm.
change. Have you
Mhm.
seen any strategies that have been able to re-energize teams during these
Mhm.
longer term transition periods?
That's a great question. I think that the silliest one is don't forget the fun. Sometimes it can feel so serious. Like the leaders I love are like, we're gonna have this offsite about all these potential things that we need to do and how we're gonna navigate, and then we're gonna go have fun together. And so I think that's what that means in an appropriate way, given what's going on in your company. But I think that's really important not to forget. Like, don't forget the fun is what the leader always says. Like in the most trying times, I think humor. Yeah, I think McKinsey even said humor is one of the more important skill sets of an executive right now. Like just being able to lighten the load a little bit for people.
Yeah,
I remember working in gaming and this executive, like we'd be in this very stressful meetings and everyone's stressed out. It's budget season, there's some massive change happening. And he would just say, hold on. We make video games, people. Video games. Like we're not heart surgeons. Like it's gonna be
no one's
okay.
gonna die,
So
literally.
this I think McKinsey called it levity, like this ability to just create levity for the team, I think becomes very important and creating those fun moments where the team can just bond. I facilitated an offsite and they were just so happy to see each other and realize they weren't crazy. Like, like they're like, oh, I'm also struggling with that, but I haven't even had time to talk to my peers about it. And now I realize it's not just me. It's okay. I'm normal. Like everyone's struggling with this. I thought I was failing. So I think finding that community again is so important with our teams and finding those levity moments with the team, having some fun, and then just doing some like open-ended one-on-ones. How are you feeling? What strategies are you using to help yourself and your team get through the change? Like, spend some time because each person is going to deal with change differently. We all know
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
are you, instead of just going through your one-on-one to do items, are you actually having some of those deeper conversations with your team just to check in and
Yeah.
see how they're doing?
Yeah. No, that's
Mhm.
good. The art of the 101 has been lost
Yeah.
by a lot of managers and leaders.
Yeah, really important during times of high change, I would say, to see how
How,
people are doing.
how much do you think the whole I want to be remote versus I want to be in person is causing some of this, extra stress and
Mhm.
anxiety that we see, and well, frankly, burnout that we see in folks
Um,
from, and constant change, but you're also alienated because you're
mhm,
sitting at home and only
mhm,
doing things
mhm.
virtually.
Yeah, well, it's like who knew we'd still be dealing with this 5 years from now? Like if someone told me, "Oh, we still be discussing this 5 years," like we haven't figured this out yet. Come on, people. It's just been talk about change fatigue. I feel like for HR people, it's just like, oh gosh, okay, now they're back to office and we're changing our tune again. So I think for HR teams, there's a lot of fatigue around this. I think, I don't know, I think there is this. I was doing some one-on-ones with people today, and there's this concept of job hugging happening right now where people feel, uh-oh, the job market's uncertain, the world's uncertain. I might be so unhappy, but it feels so scary to make a change. And
Yeah.
so I see that as more of the issue than remote or not remote. I think I really hate my job, but I just can't leave right now. It feels too uncertain. And so I'm just going to be miserable. And it may be that I can't, if I'm remote, it's even worse, because I can't have that sense of community.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like, I don't know, the more the teams that, if I look at like Atlassian, some of these companies that thrive on remote work as being one of their tenants, they're figuring it out. They're getting their teams together more often. They're taking whatever savings they can get from buildings and using it for travel. Like I
Yeah.
feel like since the pandemic, those companies have gotten quite good at keeping that connection going in some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just another disruption. Like I finally had figured out my life, and now, oh, I have to be back in the office for 3 days a week, and now I got to figure out daycare again, or I care for an elderly parent. Now what am I going to do? So I think it's just being sensitive to that, which hopefully managers have learned by now because there have been so many iterations of this thing. It's
I
okay
don't
to say
know.
come back, but being sensitive to some of those personal situations and giving people time to rearrange their lives. But I think a lot of, and I have a sense that employees don't feel like it's a safe time to speak up on some of these things
Yeah,
because they
I think that's
worry
right.
about their jobs. So
I
I
think
think that
that's right.
it's this lack of communication between the manager and the employee of, is it safe to even tell my manager this is not going to work for me? They'd rather just look for another job and hope for the best and leave. So yeah, I've seen a lot of that going on, just less communication, which is never good.
It's fascinating because I was talking to a CHRO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and the CEO, a new CEO, had come in and said, "By golly, we're going back to 5 days in the office," and gave everyone like 3 or 4 months notice,
Mm-hmm.
and um, uh, I know a number of the folks there, and I can't tell you how many reached out and said, "Hey, Jeff, keep an eye open for any new opportunities. I don't want to have to go back in the office 5 days a week." And it's like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. I think
But
it's going to be hard to go back. I mean, it's sort of like the work environment has changed so substantially since COVID. It is very hard to get people to agree to go back to 5 days a week because they see how much more productive they are at home or they see the work-life balance benefits. So I think it'll just be something that'll make it harder for those companies to recruit.
yeah,
Uh, but right now, a lot of the power is with the employer. So if you're going to make the change, now's the time to do
now's the
it.
time to do it for sure. Yeah,
So you
no,
just have
that's
to see where you are, and it's always swinging back and forth. And I just feel like it's still on the employer side right now, and so
yeah.
people are less comfortable to push back. They'll just walk with their feet if they can get another job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Didn't mean to get off on that one,
Yeah,
but
that's okay. Popular topic.
it is one of those like, oh,
Yep.
we'll get into performance reviews and performance management, which is another topic
Mhm.
that HR teams are fatigued about.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I want to spend a little bit more time on just this change management.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, you mentioned that leaders who focus on the fun,
Mhm.
are getting it. Do you think there's this necessity for leaders to be optimistic, and just being transparent, even if they don't know, if they are talking about what they do know, what they don't know. Hey,
Mhm.
we're gonna get through this. And share. Hey, we got through the last crisis. We're
Mhm.
gonna get through this one. Do you think
Mhm.
that is a critical component for leaders right now?
Oh, absolutely. I think you have to be transparent because if you aren't, and you're like, oh, it's everything's just fine, people can see through that and you're just going to lose all credibility. So I think it's exactly what you talked about is we are headed to rough waters, but we've done this before. And here's our purpose. I remember being in gaming during COVID. It was so inspiring. Like, we are going to connect people who cannot connect physically. And we're
Yeah.
actually going to create ways for people to engage and have fun with each other when they're stuck in their home. So I think you just have to go back to your purpose and vision and just say, our customers need us more than ever right now, whatever that is, small businesses, people stuck in their homes, and sort of go back to what the purpose and the mission of the company is and why people need that right now in these times, why that's so important to our customers. I think that's the piece that really motivates people because they're going to be working longer hours, they're going to be in stressful conditions. But if they know that their purpose is aligned with the company and they're motivated by that, they'll get through it. And I think going back to times when you have navigated massive change and, if you go to the tech industry, many of these
Oh
companies that
yeah.
are still here have been through so many changes. And what did we learn and what's in our culture that makes us resilient to that? So I think that's really key. I think glossing over it or saying, well, I can't really be real, I just think is it's just you're just going to lose a lot of credibility and also being humble, like realizing like, hey, we don't know what Trump is going to do tomorrow. Like, that's the reality of what we're living in. Okay, so how do we scenario plan around that? He could probably do 10 things. What will we do in those scenarios? So I think the other thing I've seen is leaders that just get their teams working on the problem, doing the scenario planning. That's how you get people to feel like they own their own destiny and they're helping the
Yeah.
company forward, and create that burning platform of why it's so important to change. And that's what the great CEOs do that I've seen.
Yeah. It that level of optimism that's necessary by, executives and frankly any leader,
Mhm.
sometimes hard, right? Because they're going through the same emotions and same fatigue and
Mhm.
and same uncertainty. How do you coach them to say, okay, that they can be honest, realistic, transparent about how they're feeling, but they still are required to, you know, say, we can do this.
Yeah. I think it's part of the job. I find the hardest groups are usually the technical groups because they feel like I have to be so truthful. I don't want to be the marketing person. So how can you be realistic but also have optimism? And I think some of the best tech leaders know how to do that so that the engineer goes, oh yeah, they're telling the real deal. They're not just giving us the marketing line, but I do have hope we can get there. And I know we have a great technical team and we'll figure it out. So I think particularly with highly technical teams, I've seen that's very hard for leaders to.
Sure.
You can't be the cynical employee. That's not going to go well. But you have to be realistic about, hey, we can get there. And are there challenges? Yes, we have X, Y, and Z, but we have teams working on them, or we're working on a path to deal with that, or I need more ideas on how we might do that. So I just think it's finding that balance because if you shift one way or the other, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And have your own support system as a leader. I would have a close peer, I had a coach, I had, people that I could talk to about how I was feeling that were outside of my team. So that I had that support system. Friend I walked with at 5 o'clock every day, during the pandemic, or we call each other as we walked, so you have to figure out
Yeah.
how you're going to create resilience for yourself so that you can help your team and sort of like put your oxygen mask on so you can help your team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leaders have to, it's a both and they've got to do it both for themselves and for their team. And so, if you want to get into leadership, just know you're
That's what you're
signing
signing
up
up
for
for.
a whole lot more for sure.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I wanna kind of shift gears into the
Mhm.
next fatigue topic, and that's performance reviews, which seems to be in a constant state of change depending on who you're talking to.
Mhm.
Actually, I just talked to someone from Intel, and they said they went back to doing annual performance reviews, even though they had done away with them a number of years ago. So, what are you seeing and what are you hearing around performance reviews in the industry?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the exciting thing for me is the companies that I'm working with are experimenting and trying new things. And I think we got into this period of, oh, we're just going to do the same thing. Oh, now we're going to get rid of ratings. No, now we're going to bring them back. And the companies I see that are doing the most innovative things are they are going back to how do we get feedback to the person as fast as possible?
Hmm.
That's what creates high performance. It's just a piece of data. If I can get that data quickly and I can trust you and listen and change my behavior, we will be a higher performing team.
Sure.
So, monthly feedback, very light, not a big process and driven by the employee. So my favorite one is 3 questions the employee has to bring to the one-on-one with the manager, which they already have, so it's not another meeting. One thing that I'm doing great right now, one thing I'm working on improving, or what is a growth area for me, and one piece of support I need from you, or maybe many more than that. And they're bringing it to the manager. And so I think that I've seen in those companies that it creates this environment of it's okay. Everyone's getting feedback. My manager's going to get one thing every month that they're going to work on. Like I'm going to get one thing. Everyone's getting one thing. Like we all can be. So it sort of normalizes this idea that we all need feedback to get better and we're going to get it in the moment. And by having the employee drive that process, it also, they may already realize they're failing. They had a bad meeting last month, I don't know, or last week, and they come to the one-on-one and go, that was a tough meeting. If they can bring it to the table and the manager can just be the supporter to say, okay, what ideas do you have on how you might change your behavior? How can I support you in that? It's a lot easier of a discussion. It feels a lot safer when the employee, and then the manager can raise things too, but it's initiated by the employee. So this monthly feedback, I think, is so critical because most performance management systems that I've worked in, the biggest issue is the feedback is so late.
Yeah.
Even quarterly, it's so late. It totally destroys any trust between the manager and the employee, or the manager or the employee and their peers. Like, why didn't someone just tell me this? Like, why is this happening quarterly? And it just kind of creates this environment where, this lack of trust, and
Yeah.
you're not be creating a high performing team if you're waiting 90 days after to give the employee the feedback, which is totally wrong. So I'm excited by some of these experiments I see people doing, and they're talking about them and they're seeing scores go up by managers, employees, that the process is better, that there's higher trust in the process. So that to me is exciting because I felt like for many years there just wasn't a lot of movement on this and we knew it wasn't working. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about to see what some of these new ideas can come up with, change that makes it better.
Hey everyone, I wanted to take a bit of time during this episode of the Leadership Puzzle to share what we do at Evolve HR Solutions. See, we see ourselves as your partner in assembling the ideal leadership team. We specialize in finding those key executives who possess not only the right skills, but also fit your organization's culture. That intersection of those two things are critical for success. And I know what you're asking, what sets Evolve apart? Besides my 30 years of experience, my whole team is about building lasting leadership foundations for your organizations. So if you're looking to build a team that has top tier talent that fits into your company's direction, give us a call. We'd love to help you out. So check us out at evolvehrs.com. Let's get back to the show. It's interesting. Just a couple of things that you said really jumped out. I started thinking back to my Intel days, kind of 90s and early 2000s. Own your own employability. So, you said, hey, the employee should drive the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Part the thing that I think I'd love to get your thoughts on, and I'll get to my other point about Intel in a minute, but is, do you feel that managers are well versed enough to be able to give the feedback in a way that the employee will hear it, hopefully on a weekly basis, or a couple times a month, depending on how often they have their one-on-ones?
No.
I know that was a softball.
Unless you work, I was like, no. I mean, there are some companies, I'm joking. There are some companies like Netflix that really embrace feedback in their culture, and I think spend a lot of time, hopefully, training their managers and their employees. I think that the thing that I've realized over the last couple of years is, why aren't we training our employees to give each other feedback? Like, why is this all on the manager? Because if the team could give each other feedback in a really great way, in a trusting way, and that's a lot easier than the manager. Now, the manager is looking for patterns and helping with the career development and figuring that. But the more the team can help each other,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, those are the best teams I've been on, where a teammate said, God, you rocked that presentation, but there's one thing that if you could just like focus on this, it'd be so much better. They didn't even call it feedback. I'm like, wow, thanks. That's so helpful. I didn't even think about that. So, I think there's this missing piece. The most successful changes I've seen, the employees get training on how to do it and the managers. And that really creates this much more, I guess, this power to make it a high performing organization, that we all want feedback, that we look forward to it. It's part of our culture. It's safe and like we welcome it. Those are exciting. I think this next generation like thrives in those environments. That's what I heard, is the employees were like, yes, this is what we want.
Yeah.
We want to learn. So I think that's the key, is the training and the practice. Some of the best rollouts I've done, I've trained, but then I've done one-on-one coaching with the managers, and they could sign up. They bring a real
Yeah.
life piece. They practice with me and I give them feedback. It's that safe environment where they can just practice. And now, there's AI tools out there that you can practice giving the AI feedback, and it tells you exactly what you did well and gives you a score. So
Right.
I just feel like, I don't know, I think that's the key to everything, is that feedback training for employees and managers. It really makes a big difference.
Yeah. I literally just remembered when I was rolling out a new performance management system. We did a video shoot of giving feedback, positive feedback, difficult feedback, and we trained managers using a video, because it was retail, so it was a lot of stores had to get that out, and that I totally forgotten that that's just something that we've had to do for years.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know,
and it's like any muscle. You have to practice it and go through different scenarios and different types of employees. We spent some time developing what we called archetypes of employees that you might have in your career.
and
Especially entry-level managers, they may not see one of those for 3 to 4 years if they've
yeah.
hired a team. So here are the different archetypes, and here's how to change how you're talking to them about their performance, or how to give them feedback, how to do career development with them. And I think thinking as classes of employees or scenarios you might find was really helpful.
No, that's really good. I mean, because you're right. I mean, how gosh, I remember just a couple months ago, I was talking to a leader, and they never had to give well, I think they were having to fire someone, but they never had to fire someone
Mm,
because of performance.
mm,
And they were really struggling with it.
mm-hmm,
And I mean, this wasn't a junior manager, first time
mm-hmm,
manager. I mean, they've
mm-hmm,
been managing for a number of years, which was like, okay, there's a whole lot of things that we could unpack with. Okay, well, why are
How did
you
this
having to
happen?
fire someone on
Hmm.
performance and not having to have those kind of difficult conversations?
Hmm.
Um, but I can imagine. I love that idea of having these archetypes that, okay,
Hmm.
here's how you can
Hmm.
engage and address and give feedback to the different archetypes so that's individualized, but it also very targeted to what's going to be helpful for the employee.
Yeah. I find managers sort of struggle with the two ends of the spectrum. The super high performer, and they're like petrified to give them feedback because they don't want to, they feel like they're going to disengage or they don't want to demotivate them or
A
and that
boat,
person
yeah,
is like super hungry for feedback. I have one of those on my team. If I could go back like years and change what I did, I would. But I just was like, I can't lose this person. They're like my top performer. But if I didn't give them the feedback, then they would never grow. So it's this catch 22 for the manager. So I think that end of the spectrum, they're sort of weary to give them feedback. And then on the other, like when the person that really just cannot comprehend the feedback, like they don't have the emotional intelligence or the self-awareness. And how do you break through that and build that trust with that person so they really listen and see you as an ally and not someone that's, trying to hurt them.
yeah.
That can
No,
be.
that's really good to be able to have some way to like encapsulate all of that stuff and train on these different things that hopefully they don't ever see one of those
Mhm.
individuals who are just clueless. They think they're the best thing since
Mhm.
sliced bread, but they are
Mhm.
they're just out of the league.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably the hardest one. And the manager tries different tactics and different ways of showing them the real life examples and the impact it's had on the team.
Yeah,
Eventually, those people do come around. And sometimes it's the manager is not using forceful enough language or showing, okay, this is the impact and these are the consequences if you don't change your behavior.
right.
Um, you're trending to not get a bonus this year. I don't want that for you. Like I don't think you want that either, but like that's the consequence of you not changing this behavior. So I think that's when I've seen the biggest wake up call is that manager is giving the feedback, and the employee just thinks, oh, it's not really, it's
Not
okay.
that.
It's no big deal until like the consequences discussion comes in. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, we
you're
don't
not going
want
to get a raise. You're not going to get a
that.
bonus. Yeah,
Yeah, and then they go, oh wow, this is like really serious. I didn't realize that. So even the most like people that aren't self-aware, they get that part. So that usually is the wake-up call. And so the earlier you can tell them after maybe 3 or 4 feedback conversations, hey, you're trending in this direction. It's not
yeah,
happening yet, but I can see if it doesn't change, this is where we're going to be, and I don't want to be there with you.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, those are important conversations as well.
You know, you seem to be a big proponent of kind of these monthly check-ins and whatnot, which I agree
Mhm.
100%. And
Mhm.
it's kind of interesting because if I think back on my time, early days, Intel, the high tech world, moving, changing fast, they had an annual performance cycle.
Mhm.
Um, where you got the review once a year and whatnot. But what was interesting about that environment is um, you would set your goals, and on a quarterly basis, you're going through, you know, performance to the things that you said that you were going to do, which
Mhm.
wasn't called feedback. It wasn't performance feedback, but it was, focused on, hey, how are you
Well,
doing towards, achieving the results that you've laid out? Um, and so while the document and the formal process and the raise and the stock grants and whatnot happen once a year, there
mhm.
there was there was feedback all along,
Mhm.
but it was not done the way
Mhm.
that it's done today. And gosh, during the 90s and early 2000s, Intel was on fire. Not the same
Mhm.
Intel it is today, but
Mhm.
it was changing the world.
Mhm.
And I I have to believe that there was something unique in what they were doing back then that companies today could probably learn from
Mhm.
to adapt, even though the world has changed a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the other things I've seen work is training managers on how to have that chartering conversation with their boss. So there's the feedback piece, but then also getting really good on chartering. Okay, what are the objectives? What do we need to do? How does this tie to the purpose so I can share it with my team? So what I've done is kind of train managers on here are the top 4 areas you need to be asking about when you're chartering work with your manager. Like, do you have the answers to all of these questions? And most of the time they have like 70% of the answers, right? And
Yeah.
then so giving them and training all the leaders, like it's okay. You should be giving them all this information. If you don't have it, that's okay. But then when is it going to come in? I think those chartering, this is the objective, this is the result, let's build it together. Do we agree? That's got to be part of it, I think. And so that doesn't go away in a high feedback culture. In fact, what I've seen is those leaders are quite good at
Hmm.
chartering the work. Okay, let's charter from the beginning. How do we know if we're successful? What kind of resources do you need? Do you have what you need? What should we, those conversations are happening all the time. And they're very intentional conversations. And so I found in organizations that do a great job chartering the work up front, it saves them so much churn along the way.
Yeah.
And in this environment, maybe it's like, hey, we're going to charter and we're going to work on this until we have this data. And then we're going to relook at resourcing and what we're doing there. So I think in a high change environment, getting really good at those chartering conversations with your
Hmm.
manager and leaders getting good at them, I think that just makes things go faster. And it saves you so much churn when
Yeah.
things do change. You know how to have them in an effective way.
Yeah. You get the direction
Mhm.
beginning of the year. Whenever I mean, you can call them OKRs or goals or objective, whatever you use to say, hey, what are you going to do this year?
Mhm.
Um, I had a guest on that says, what problems are you going to solve this year? So different way to
Mhm.
look at it. Very interesting. Um, but because of all of the change, which we talked about earlier in the podcast, leaders need to be willing to adjust and not hold someone, to the feet to the fire.
Mhm.
Gosh, I can remember. Well, you said you were going to do that. Well, yeah, but
Mhm.
like we sold the division. It doesn't matter. You still committed to do that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Flexibility is key. I think that's the best thing you could do is as I think the high performing teams, they figure out, okay, what did we learn last year about our objective process? What worked, what didn't? Okay, you know what? Things changed and we never talked about it as a team. We just
Yeah,
assumed. So let's make sure those are like documented conversations or that gets on the agenda fast so that we can have that change conversation, not at the end when we're doing our performance review. So I just think also that learning environment of teams, high performing teams I've been on, they're like, what worked, what didn't last year? How do we get better at this? How do we did one step better every year? Because
yeah,
no team's perfect at it, and red, yellow, green every quarter. So we catch stuff earlier, and we only talk about the reds. That's what we're going to focus on. Green's good, yellows, what can we do now? But let's
yeah,
not look to red. So I think this culture around always tracking, catching things early, knowing when things are changing and having a conversation instead of waiting for some performance review. Oh, let's look at the objectives. How do we do? The teams that I've been on that are successful are always looking at it. They're always talking about it. They prioritize the ones
yeah,
that are most at risk.
yeah.
So it becomes a living thing versus this HR process, which doesn't always work for the rhythm of the business.
And I imagine you have seen the teams and the leaders that can tweak and navigate that throughout the year have a higher success rate in achieving um, not only what they set out to, but probably a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that the leaders I've seen, they push the teams a little bit.
Hmm.
Get one more thing in, like, and the team's like, no, there's this, we can't. But they don't let they're very conscious of not dropping the bar. I've had a lot of leaders say, like, I want to keep the bar high. And so that we're setting the tone. I don't want to burn the team out, but I also don't want to water stuff down.
Yeah.
And then also a lot of data-based objectives. What's the baseline? Where do we want to be? How are we tracking that? Instead of, oh, we just need to get faster. Let's just get faster. We're too slow. So that data focus, I think, is really handy.
Yeah, I mean, data is so important. And obviously there's certain functions that are a little bit easier to manage on data, sales, some of the engineering and coding and whatnot. HR is a little bit harder sometimes
Mhm.
to manage on. Okay, well,
Mhm.
what is? Oh yeah, I got that project done, or
Yeah, yeah.
I'm 47% done on the project that I wanted to do this year.
Yeah. I don't know. I disagree with that. I think the top HR teams, we always had metrics and we were constantly pushing how are we going to measure business impact? How are we going to measure engagement? And it's an art and a science. It's not like you said sales, like, oh, it's clear, but like I'm going to run these 5 programs and I believe I'm going to get at least a 5 to 6 point engagement bump. And I'm going to just try to figure out, can I figure out how is it a combination of the programs? Is it one of those? And then I'm just going to experiment till I get it right. And then you have classes, with that type of organization, if you do this, you should get some bump. And then teams, the high performing teams I've been on, they have a very strong HR analytics function and they know
Yeah.
they really put that to the test of can we prove that these things actually cause retention issues or cause us to retain our best performers and they sort of have this we must measure and try to figure out what's impacting and what was that difference. And it's not easy. That's why I think I enjoyed it, doing the
Yeah.
work that we do. It's
Yeah.
not straightforward. You have to experiment, and what worked on one team won't work on another. So you've got to figure it out. So I think that's what for me, makes it really fun.
Oh yeah, and HR certainly has come a long way with its analytics,
Mhm.
and those who can draw that connection to how it's going to benefit the business,
Mhm.
whether it's engagement or
Mhm.
gosh, even going down to EBITDA or margins. I mean, there's ways to do that, and so they're the ones that are going to be a little bit more successful when. So thank you for going. Hey, wait a second. No, you're not. We're going to disagree on this,
Right. Yeah.
but
All good.
you're right because there are teams out there that they're doing it better, and others are like, well, wait a second, I'm just a touchy feely group. I'm the party planners, and that's not what we want HR to be either.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So. Okay, well, Carolyn, it has been just a pleasure talking with you. Our time's just about up, but I wanna give you a time to share, your website. How can people get in touch with you if they want to engage you,
Hmm.
in your
Yeah.
coaching or
Sure.
consulting?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. It's leadership360.org. You can find me there or on LinkedIn. So either of those ways, just shoot me a note. And I'd say 50% of my time is coaching leaders and teams, and the other is just HR consulting. So you might be a small business that doesn't have an HR department, or a business going through massive change and you need some change management help. Or you might just be an individual or leader or team that needs some coaching. So yeah, give us a call. I'll get right back to you. Looking
That's
forward.
great. And it's leadership-360.org, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. You might not get to the right place if it's just Leadership 360. So, well, that is all for today's episode of the Leadership Puzzle. I want to thank Carolyn for sharing her wisdom and experience. I think we probably could talk a lot, but boy, just learning how to lead through the fog of war that we've been in has been very insightful. So if you've enjoyed the conversation, please like, follow, and share the show so other people in your network can enjoy it as well. And until next time, keep leaning, keep learning, keep putting the pieces together. I'm Jeff Lipinacci, and I'll see you next time on the Leadership Puzzle.